Welcome to this easy A to B full flight tutorial for the new F-35. The only assumptions that you've planned a flight in the sim are starting on a runway with the engines on and are using the default MSFS ATC. I will cover more complex systems and startup procedures in a later video. With that said, let's go flying. Our first job is to set the nav source to route, which means the plane will follow the route you've planned in the sim. With that done, click the Autopilot pop-up and the Autopilot panel opens. With the Autopilot panel open, we click the altitude box and enter our initial desired altitude of 14,000. We click the speed box, enter our initial desired speed of 250 knots. We then click to open the navigation pop-up, click the ILS box and dial in our ILS of the destination, which is 110.500 for my short flight to Stansted. We then close the navigation and autopilot pop-ups because we're going to do a short takeoff here. So we click the hook/short takeoff button on the console, the lift fan opens and the engine vectors downwards for our vertical takeoff. So now it's time for takeoff. A lot of things are going to happen very quickly here, so feel free to pause or play the video at a slower speed if you need to. First of all, we open up the autopilot panel again, so we have easy access to it. We then throttle up and our vertical takeoff begins. We pitch the nose up slightly and that's our short, almost vertical takeoff complete. With positive rate, we'll put the gear up. We then click the short takeoff button again to transition to normal flight. At this point, we'll arm the auto throttle, select speed hold, select altitude hold and route hold, and arm the autopilot. With this done, the plane comfortably climbs at 250 knots, following our route to our desired altitude. And you can see here we're in a normal flight configuration. We're then given a step climb, so we click the altitude box again, dial in our new desired altitude of 19,000, and because we're above 10,000 feet, we can adjust our desired speed to 300 knots. The plane will now climb to our desired cruising altitude, only 19,000 for this demo flight at 300 knots. When we reach our cruising altitude, the plane levels off and we can make things a bit more interesting, so we're going to ask for 500 knots and the afterburners light, and we are off to Mach 1. As soon as it hits that desired speed, it's comfortable holding it with the afterburners off as well, which saves fuel. And if you're on a longer flight at higher altitudes, this plane will cruise at Mach 1.6. When ATC gives us our top of descent, again we click the altitude box, dial in our new desired altitude of 8,500 and our new desired speed of 300, the plane will decelerate and descend. As we head below 10,000, because this is a simple A to B flight, we're flying it in a fairly civil way, we're going to decelerate again to 250 knots, which means we won't have any issues making the final turns for our approach. A few more step descents follow. We're finally at our bottom of descent at 2,500 feet, so we adjust our speeds to 140 knots for our approach. As the plane flies the final few turns of its flight plan for approach, we drop the landing gear. When you see magenta lines on your PFD, it means the plane has picked up the localizer. So switch your nav source to VOR, you'll see the word route replaced by ILS. Click the VOR hold button on your autopilot panel and the plane will fly the localizer towards the airport. We're going to fly a normal landing here. As far as I can tell, you have to fly the glide slope manually. If I'm wrong, please do correct me in the comments. So we're going to keep our velocity vector pointed roughly at where we want to touch down. You can see to start with I was a little bit high, but now we've got that vector pointed nicely over the touchdown zone. As we get closer to the runway, I disengage the autopilot and auto throttle, and once we're above the runway, bring the throttles back to idle, come in at quite a high flare and touch down fairly smoothly. So there we go. A successful flight in the IndiaFoxtEcho F-35B for Microsoft Flight Sim. If you did find this useful, please drop a like, and if you'd like to see more tutorials, please do subscribe as I make this kind of content fairly regularly. I will be making more complex F-35 videos, but until then, take care and I'll see you next time.